All right, this the Wilfred Owen's Dulce et Decorum Est, which is the last of Wilfred Owen's poems we're going to discuss. And I'm actually going to be a little different here. I mean, this poem is very much a reaction to what was another famous poem circulating around. Of London, or England at the time, which was very much a recruitment poem, and it was very much a winning sort of thing. By Jesse Pope, it's called "Who's for the Game," a poem probably only remembered for not for its aesthetic beauty or greatness, but only as a sort of historical document of its time for World War One. Again, this was one of those poems would have been near the recruitment posters, and with these dashing men with lantern jaws and blonde hair, blue eyed sort of British soldier, these Adonis British soldiers, sort of trying to get the young men to sign up for the war. So this one's the one again that Owens is a reaction to this. So the original the poem he's reacting to is called "Who's for the Game" by Jesse Pope. Who's for the game? The biggest that's played the red crashing game of a fight. Who grip and tackle the job unafraid? Who thinks he'd rather sit tight? Who'll toe the line for the signal to go? Who'll give his country a hand? Who wants to turn to himself in the show? Who wants a seat in the stand? Who knows it won't be a picnic, not much, but yet eagerly soldiers a gun. Who would much rather come back with a crutch than lie low and be out of the fun. Come along, lads, but you'll be all right, for there's only one course to pursue. Your country is up to her neck in a fight, and is looking and calling for you. And again, this was one of the sort of you can kind of see it sort of sung and she almost sings itself or chanted. You can almost sort of see it also as like a drinking song, a bunch of hooligans in a bar or something, right? It was for the game, the biggest to play, the country game of a fight. But anyway, it's very patriotic, extremely the poem about the glory and the sort of righteousness of the fight itself. Anyway, here will be Owen's reaction to all that, and it's an anti-war poem. It's also very much an anti-recruitment to war poem, or so. And again, Dulce et Decorum Est, which means it is sweet and right to die for one's country in Latin, from Horace, I believe. Um, Bent double, like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs and toward our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot, all went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas, gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes in thick green light, as under a sea I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his hanging face like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cut of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, oh, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children, ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori. Um, and again, boy, what a crushing response to that first poem, and just again, you're getting all probably Owen's finest moment on paper, and for most people, I think would consider if you were to pick one poem for I think almost everyone, it would be close to unanimous. This is the greatest poem to come out of that war, and again, that war was a war that saw human carnage on a scale that simply hadn't existed before. It was a war again that's where the technological advancement of the weaponry had gone beyond the general's ability to plan for it, and everything again from machine guns to gas to planes dropping bombs. It was it was death on a level that really hadn't happened. It created the trench war because the weaponry was so much. What they had to do is dig into trenches and try to keep their heads, below them. The trenches, and this is about the trench itself, and it was a rough place. And again, and you get and the recruitment posters would have been implying there would have been none of this, in there, right? It would, again, you go back, easy thing to Google image and worth doing, by the way, to give yourself, to be, again, blonde-haired, blue-eyed British soldiers with chests out to here, and just all would be Adonises, and their muscular arms, and this would just everything would have been vigor and masculinity, and you are definitely not the first image, right? He gives us here, bent double like old beggars under sacks. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge. Boy, you are right compared to beggars. And again, these are young soldiers. These are strapping young men, right? These, compared to beggars under sacks, right? You see, they're kind of trudging. Fuck, man, hell. And bent like beggars under that knock-kneed, coughing like hags. That's even to an old man beggar, and then even an old woman sort of beggar. So so they're shown as feeble, and just exhausted. Right, and they're cursing through the sludge. What a great verb that is, too, right? They didn't just walk through; they cursed through the sludge. You can already say, you could use that. He could do that because you can already, they're walking, right? So just a brilliant word choice there by Owens, and then he cursed through sludge, and then and they're coughing, and they're the opposites of the vigorous men in those posters. And again, even a slight image of the old the weird old sisters in Macbeth a little bit. So I think he's calling into their connotations of. Till on the haunting flares we turned our backs and toward our distant rest began to trudge. So they've kind of survived the fight. They're going to get a bit of a break now, and they're just sort of walking away from it, and the war is just finally getting a little bit behind them. They think they're going to go get some R&R, maybe spend the weekend, in a hotel, maybe go try and get a date or something. Toward our distant rest began. Again, the rest is always distant for soldiers in Owen's poetry. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, and I think I spoke about that in the intro lecture. That was fairly common. And again, trench foot for the soldiers fighting in those trenches was common. One of the most common things that would often, including leading to infections that would result in death. Sometimes the shoe would come off, and they'd be walking, and their feet were so numb because it was so wet and cold in there anyway, and they were stuck there. All that you couldn't poke your head up; it would get blown off. So they might have lost, his shoe 1,000 yards back, and there's all kinds of soldiers, but they're crowded in there too. There's rats, they're crawling around their feet. So he might have lost his shoe, and has been walking barefoot. Many lost their boots, right? And again, the mud would get those things, just suck it right off their feet, and it would take them too long to realize. And then, but limped on, bloodshot, and then the shod right there, it might even be shooed. And think of it as shoed, like SHOE, as if you turned shoe into a verb. Shoed, meaning blood, like shoeing a horse is what he's referring to there. And meaning the blood on the bottom of their feet caked so much that it was almost like the sole of a shoe. All the dried up caked blood, right? That's the kind of imagery we're getting here. But limped on, bloodshot, all went lame, all blind. Again, we're getting us marched asleep, lame, blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of the gas shells dropping softly behind. And even the gas shells now, because they're starting to get some distance from it, and the noise is getting a little less deafening. But they don't quite get there, right? And a gas, quick boys, an ecstasy of humble. What a word, ecstasy, to use there. Because there always is the sort of inebriation to battle too. So especially once they've survived a few, gotten through, they've almost calloused, themselves to that intense fear, that boy, you're never more alive than when you're almost dead. And the same, guys get addicted to jumping out of planes or rock climbing, or you can certainly very much get addicted to the inebriation that comes with the combat and battle as well. I don't know if anyone's what was the Catherine Bigelow film? I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it. The Hurt Locker, worth seeing, by the way, and that is all about that was it was the Iraq War, and it was about a bomb specialist, the guy who comes in and defuses bombs, and anyway, a wild, an insanely dangerous job, and this guy was like the best at it. One of the best scenes is when he comes home and he's in one of these one of those huge grocery stores we have now, these super big box, like super Stop and Shops and grade A's, things like that around us. And he just, how boring and how lifeless life seems to him, and it ends. That movie does end, playing this really loud kind of heavy metal music, and he's on a plane, and the ramp goes down the plane, and he marches right back. He goes back into the fight. He sort of been so, he's internalized the war so much that he can't. That's where he's alive. And that's where he can't live without it. So anyway, gas, and the ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone was still yelling and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. And again, what's happened is the bomb is going off, the gas is all around them, the mustard gas, and they're all putting their helmets on. Boy, I tell you what, look up the World War One gas helmets too. They're pretty wild. They're these big sort of they almost look like the kind of a face, it's almost like a snorkeling mask or something you'd go swimming with, and with a big hose kind of coming off the front of their, wild looking, and floundering like a man in fire or lime, dimmed through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a sea I saw him drowning. And that it was an awful way to die. You would breathe in the gas, and basically your lungs would just burn from the inside out. It was excruciating, and it is like you were drowning on hot air or flaming air, as I guess the best I can describe, or the description I've read. And it was not a fun thing, to watch one of your brothers, die like that is not. And all tensing up and his eyes bulging out, and once he got to that point, it was too late. There was nothing to do but watch him die. And so that's one of them, again, didn't get their masks on, so he's watching him. That's what's happened. And then you just get the one couplet, up there, which is the only one in the poem. And in all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. And again, and notice the word, a lot of assonance, meaning playing around with the not a lot of rhyming here, some near rhyming, but again, it's almost as if the sounds, the phonetic sounds itself is a lot of hard K's and T's here, guttering, choking, drowning, all hard sort of sounds, and all hard words too, guttering, choking, drowning, and it is as if it feels like things breaking up, right? That's what the sound is putting in your ears as you're reading it is. Things that there's nothing melodious about most of this, even though some of the even though some of the imagery here really does have a profound kind of dark, a weird sort of beauty, especially this last stanza here. And then he then begins to address Jesse Pope, who wrote that other recruitment poem, directly. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and listen, if you've been there, and again, it's not. he's not real nasty about it with her, right? He's like, he even has a little sympathy for just. I kind of thought this too until I went there and saw it all, right? But if in some smothering dream, what a great way, smothering dreams, and that is what happens to Common, right? They can't, their dreams do smother them because it wakes up. They often don't get full night's sleep the rest of their lives. If in some smothering dreams you two could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and just a great line. Again, this is like an old wooden wagon, almost like you'd imagine during the Black Death or something. They're collecting baggage, so they've just had to, they didn't have time to be dignified about it. They had to fling their buddy in there after he died, and they get out of there, right? And he wasn't even quite dead when they flung him in the wagon. If in some smothering dreams you two could pace, again, he's having these. We've already learned he's having these dreams over and over again. If in some smothering dreams you two could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face. What a line again! His eyes going around, and his hanging face like a devil sick of sin. And that hanging face is literally kind of referring to the hang. If a man has been hung, the way his face looks. And again, another thing you can Google image is it's a grotesque sort of thing you look at. And again, like a devil's sick of sin, as if the horror of this place would be too much even for Satan himself, right? Like a devil's sick. That's what his face looks like. Not just the devil, but like the devil who's had enough of all this. If you too could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs. What a line! Again, you're going back, written with the sort of lyrical beauty of the romantic poem, of romantic poetry, but again conveying this horrific image, come gargling from the corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. And again, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud. What a cud! A great word choice there. Of vile, incurable sores. Vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. That was often how. What's the? Give me a second. Sorry. Can't believe I'm syphilis. Sorry, which would have been the STD of the day. And again, often soldiers, when they're taking a break from war, understandably, they would often visit prostitutes, and the STD of their day would have been syphilis, and how it often presented itself as these horrible sort of sores on the tongue and in your mouth. And by the way, eventually your mind would just almost get eaten, almost as if you had a million piranha or something swimming around inside your skull casing, and you would go just kind of crazy eventually. Obscene as cancer, bitter as the cut of vile, but again, incurable sores on innocent tongues. So some of these soldiers aren't doing that, and some of them might even be sexual virgins, and they're being corrupted like this. But then he says, if you too could see all this, right? And my friend, you would not tell with such eyes as to children, as what he's calling these soldiers, ardent for some desperate glory, almost harkening right back to that strange meeting, that first poem we discussed, the old lie, Dulce is sweet and right to die for one's country. Just an astonishing and unforgettable poem. Maybe the greatest poem, probably the greatest poem to come out of World War One. And that is Dulce et Decorum by Wilfred. Thanks.